Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you. Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 51. Today, I come to you with a tale of friendship, highly alcoholic, perhaps magically enhanced cider, and giant worms. That's right, his name is Simon Pure, and he's anything but, as we've come to know and love as we return to the world of the unnamed. My name is Nick, and I have a very special surprise for the listeners out there. I am rejoined by Canadian loyalist, creator of Armored, and occasional Redcoat guest co-host, Michael Schwartz. Michael, how have things been?
They've been busy. I feel like it's been like a year since I was on the podcast last. But going over the issues with you, I only missed issue 8, didn't I?
Yep. The last time you were on was issue 7 for Einstein.
It's only been one, but it feels like forever. I've been busy working on a VFX team for 1923, working with a VFX team on the TV show 1923, writing a new movie, new R.L. Stine movie. I don't know what else. It's been busy, Nick, but I'm happy to be back. We're recording this the day after the Toronto Comic-Con, so I didn't get a lot of sleep. And since then, and since we've spoken, your president wants to make our country the 51st state. So, maybe I won't be a Canadian loyalist much longer. I'll have to call myself something else.
I'm one of those citizens that's a bad citizen because I like shut myself off from all that media because I can only devour comic book content if I want and stuff related to my job. And it never, so that's a thing, huh? I guess we'll see. That'd be a pretty darn big state.
There'll be a battle. I wonder whose side Redcoat would join.
Oh my goodness, the conundrum. Because you'd think he would feel a kinship with the Mounties.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
Because they have the red jackets. Yeah. So Toronto Comic-Con, that's exciting. Mm-hmm. You were doing Armored stuff there, so the Armored train is still moving along, yes?
Still moving along, yeah.
Great.
We're going to be doing a Kickstarter soon for the hardcover edition that collects 1 through 5. So that'll be coming soon, probably in a few weeks, pre-launch. Yeah. Keep your eyes peeled.
Very cool. We'll do that. Just curious, when you were at the Toronto Comic-Con, did you end up seeing anybody? I know Ghost Machine wasn't there as like a brand with a booth, but did you see anybody that has, lent any creative to Ghost Machine and or people that know about the show?
I saw Mike McCone and I was thinking, Hey, he should do some Ghost Machine covers because Jeff and him worked together on Teen Titans together.
Yeah,
so maybe someday. Cool. But actually, a listener of the podcast came to my table to check out Armored. So I forget your name if you're listening, but hello, thank you for coming to check out, come say hi and check out the book. It was great meeting you.
Right on. Super cool.
I wish I could remember his name.
If you can, I'll make you a deal. If you email ghostmachinefans@gmail.com and you let me know what you and Michael talked about, then I'll make sure you get your hot little hands on some copies of Armored for you.
Oh,
how about that?
That sounds like a good deal. Do it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, hey, it's awesome to have you back on the show, Michael. And like you said, you've done almost all of our Redcoat episodes with us. I think you just didn't do number 1, and obviously the last one about the family, the Bloody Bender family of serial killers and whatnot.
I know, and I really love that one. I love that one.
Oh, did you?
I'm a big horror fan, right? Like it was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Redcoat. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's a true story. That was really accurate to what they were doing. Yeah. Crazy. As usual, we've got a quick shout out, Mike, and this one's pretty neat. Do you pay attention at all to the Instagrams and stuff on Friday? We have the Fan Friday content thing.
Yeah, I do, and there's some amazing art. I'm still waiting for some of them to jump on the armored art.
There you go. There you go. That's a great idea. I got plenty of artists I can connect you with that have contributed amazing things on Fridays.
Nice.
Yeah. But this particular creator, I wanted to give them a shout out because they did something different. And it's always cool to see when it's not just art. We've gotten so much awesome art, but we've gotten other really neat creations too. And what this person did, his name is Alex Adralin, and he reached out with a submission directly to us. And he has a plush cat version of Pepper from Hornsby and Halo, and he stitched on the black lightning bolts that are above Pepper's eyebrows, you know what I mean, to indicate evil cat or ancient cat or whatever. We don't fully know exactly too much about Pepper yet. I just thought that was super cool, and thanks a lot for shooting it over to us for that Fan Friday. So that was creative, that was neat, and if you have anything that you'd like to submit for Ghost Machine Fan Friday, which is on Instagram, Reddit, Blue Sky, and Twitter, just shoot us an email at ghostmachinefans@gmail.com. And now we have a news segment. And the thing is, I don't do the news. That's not how this works.
So I'll do the news.
I have to get out of here because Snoggle, this is her thing. She's like the anchor for the news, and she's not here. She's unavailable. She could not attend, which she's heartbroken about, especially because you're here, let me tell you. But she asked that we carry on and that you step to the news desk in her stead. So
I will try my best. So here goes. So today is Wednesday, March 19th, which just so happens to be the release date of The Rockefellers #4. So make sure you all run out to your local comic shop and snag a copy of that issue. Also, don't forget that a week from today, Ghost Machine fans will be airing their 1-year anniversary episode with returning guests Brad Anderson and Rob Lee. That's wild. 1 year, eh?
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. Oh, man. We're also excited to announce that a few weeks after that, Ghost Machine cover artist Sean Von Gorman, also of the Pedestrian fame, who I have met, Nick. I've met him at New York City Comic Con, and he's such an awesome guy. I met him at San Diego as well. He'll be joining the show for an interview, so all of you should listen to that episode. Sean is such a great dude, and The Pedestrian is one of the best books of 2024 by far.
Yeah, very cool. If you recall, Ghost Machine fans, it was a book that won some Cheersies through the Nerd Initiative recently when Ghost Machine took home a suitcase full of them, too. He seems like a pretty cool artist for sure, and he's done a Rockefellers cover that's really cool that I've seen, and he collaborated with us on that, which we really appreciate. And he also did a Geiger cover that's like, ooh, forget about it. Chef's kiss. Really cool.
Yeah, those covers are great.
Before we talk about this comic book that we're going to talk about today, for Redcoat #9, we have to briefly give the listeners a rundown of the covers that they can get, because in the off chance that they haven't purchased it yet, and like some people I know may have had to go out to their local comic shop as soon as today and obtain it, then you'll know which covers you have the option of choosing from. Which one did you get? Because you actually went to the shop recently and picked this physical copy up, right?
I've been so busy I haven't been able to pick up my my pulls. I got the A cover. I always get the A cover with this series.
Cool.
So Brian Hitcham, Brad Anderson, Johnny Appleseed, or Simon and Johnny Appleseed sitting in a tree having a drink together.
He's double fisting jugs, Simon is.
Oh, yes, is he ever.
And if you are a highly sophisticated Ghost Machine fan who pays attention to our Instagram, you may have seen this image recently utilized in a promotional video for this episode.
The best video you've ever produced, Nick.
Low budget. It's good.
It's so good.
No, we did. It really is it's a really cool cover of them up in an apple tree, right? Like just hanging out.
Yeah, like always, it is a wraparound cover, like all the other A covers have been, and there's apples on the back of the cover with some really interesting imagery back there. Like there's a lot going on in these apples.
What do you see in the apples?
Oh, I see Einstein. I see Einstein with, sorry, Einstein as a kid. I see Washington. I see Einstein. I think it's Einstein with Redcoat, looking at a tombstone. I see a dude in the top right corner that looks like Dracula, but I don't know who that is. Do you know who that is?
Could it be Benedict Arnold?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's Benedict Arnold, but he looks, yeah, it must be. Oh, and then Geiger in an apple. It's like Simon in some sort of war. I'm seeing, is that Benjamin Franklin? I'm seeing Junkyard Joe, the Northerner. I'm seeing a man hit a young boy, and I'm seeing a baby laying in the streets naked. I'm guessing that's Simon.
Yeah, I think that's him getting orphaned
Yep.
before. Yeah, we'll talk about that here.
Yeah, I'm seeing Annie Oakley in the bottom, and those weird creatures, like those monkey creatures. We haven't really seen them yet, right? We've just seen statues of them in Benedict Arnold's cave thing.
We've seen either statues or taxidermied versions. I'm not sure.
I just called his secret lair a cave thing, like he's Batman.
I knew what you
or something.
meant. Yeah, no, I knew what you meant. The temple, the underground temple.
The
thing,
underground
right?
temple, but I see it as like Batman's cave, I guess, because he collects things like Batman.
Well, you're talking about two parts of it, right? Because at first they had the cool room with like the dinosaur and all the loot, including Johnny Appleseed's bag of seeds. And then after they got captured, they got taken to like the room from Dragnet with Chevy Chase, or whatever, like the goat worshippers, like type of room with the whole thing. But with that all the dinosaur bones are in a pile burning for whatever reason in the middle of the room. And so, yeah, no, I get it. But that sounds like the many shades of Simon's life in apples. We'll take a quick glance at the other two covers as we do. The second one was by Mark Buckingham and John Calise. Are you familiar with Mr. Buckingham?
No, I'm not.
Kind of reminiscent of like almost, I don't know, Terry Moore a little bit. Like, it doesn't give me a Strangers in Paradise vibe necessarily, but I like the way that the characters are drawn, and they're drawn realistically. But the emphasis here is that the cover has a giant apple, with Johnny Appleseed sitting on the top of it, which is kind of taking place at the end of the issue because Simon has a kid on his shoulders. But the third, what'd you make of the third one that like has absolutely no connection whatsoever to the rest of these or this story?
Yeah, he's hung and being tarred. It's an interesting choice. I wonder if this is for a future. Was this maybe planned for a future issue? And then they used it on this one? I'm curious. It's interesting.
So he's hanging upside down, being tarred and feathered, specifically. And, I mean, the art's cool. It's by Steve Lieber with colors by Wes Zioba, who we've seen a couple other variant covers as well. But what crime is your typical tarred and feathering crime? Like what? Because, back in the day, why would they give you that penalty?
I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know. I didn't think of it until just now.
Tarring and feathering was usually used as a form of vigilante justice and became a favorite of early American patriots in their protests against British taxation. So maybe he was taxing people.
Maybe he was taxing people. Or in the very least, his coat got him the attention that was deserving of one who was taxing people. Well, hey, I like the art in that one for sure, but it does make you wonder, like, okay, like, because we have seen covers that are just whatever. We've seen some really neat covers with Simon holding like cable-sized blasters and stuff in the future, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So what we have to do briefly here, if you recall, Michael, is before we deep dive into this comic book, we need to give everybody a moment. So this is your official spoiler pause for Redcoat number 9. Okay, all right, we made it. We're free. We can do whatever we want. We can say whatever we want. We're free to discuss this fantastic comic book.
You've been warned.
And bring us up to speed. Can you assist in that? Because you reminded us that you were on the Einstein episode, which was number 7, which was the end of that first 7-issue arc between him and Albert Einstein. And then the last issue was him with the Bloody Bender family, right?
Yeah.
Really, all it is that it's not a story connected to this, right?
Yeah, like we're in what seems to be a bit of an era we're in where it is self-contained stories to some degree of Redcoat's different parts of Redcoat's life, getting snippets of his stories he's had with all these interesting, unique individuals. I think you earlier when we were talking, you called it something else, like side quests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are just side quests. That's true. Yeah, and that's a good point, because at the end of that arc with Einstein, I was ready to be like seeing hero Simon, because you remember how he kind of talks briefly in the hospital about like how he defeated a bad guy, and he's like, ooh, like that's less self-deprecating than who we've seen in the past. But at the same time, we've been teased about the story of Johnny Appleseed. We've been teased about the story of Annie Oakley. And it's like, okay, I want to see those. Like, one of the reasons I love the character is, how they can span through time and have different experiences like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think at the end of number 8, there was a 1-page spread teasing the Northerner. And at the end of the issue, this is not a spoiler. There's nothing. It's one panel. At the end of the issue, after the one we're deep diving into today, which just came out recently, there's also a 1-page panel of the Northerner again, reminding everybody, the Northerner's coming, the Northerner's coming. And we've seen covers now for future issues of Redcoat with the Northerner and Redcoat, like on the cover, like with him, with his arm around him, like drinking probably Johnny Appleseed cider. So, Mike, what I'm getting at is, I feel as though when the Northerner gets introduced to the story is when we reconnect with the main quest line.
Yes, I could see that. So I guess what Jeff and Brian are doing is they are, they've kind of hinted at these stories, and now they're paying them off a bit in a way, and they're fun. They're very fun. Well, I guess the last one, that was just a one-off that we hadn't heard about that weird cannibal family before, right?
True. We had heard they were referenced in a panel as a historical, but nothing that specific. It was just like very few people would remember that panel.
Okay. But that's why we have you.
Yeah. Well, Brian Hitch actually mentioned them, and then they did. Ghost Machine did a reel about it too, about that family, and we did a Redcoat history lesson video, like probably 6 months or more ago now, with how long this has been going on, because it's a real thing, and it's fraught with, that's what's cool about this book to me, is that all the historical accuracies, because like, I didn't know that Johnny Appleseed had magical powers, like boom, mind blown. Like, so let's talk about that and figure it out. Point is, we don't really pick back up from him having fought off serial killers. We just start a news story that's self-contained, like you said, and that is taking place originally. He's telling us how he met this guy, Johnny Appleseed, and that he's his very first best friend.
And they're on the hunt for something, right? That's how this whole story begins.
Right. And so there's a little bit of time back and forth, right? The story we're reading takes place in 1816. And we get the typical, like, my name is Simon Pure. And I kind of like it every time a little bit more when I see that because I feel like it's prolonging the mythos or something. But yeah, they're running and it looks like there's, at first, it's like, is there an earthquake or something like that, right? And then we just see this massive spread, 2-page spread of like a path has been cut through everything, including trees. Very detailed route work there, Mr. Hitch.
While they're out searching, this is where we get some backstory, where Simon tells us some backstory about their history, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the timing is also relevant in terms of how much time has passed.
One of the stories that, well, I guess you describe the stories a bit, because there's one that I think would make an amazing, like, movie. Or a great issue. I think it would make a great single issue. I want to see another one.
Oh, I know which one. I know which one you want the issue of.
Okay, you go through some of what he talks about here.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't think of it that way, but you're right. Each panel is kind of like and this stage of our relationship, and then this one, and then adventure. But, like, we kind of get an exposition. It's all him. They're walking through the woods trying to find this thing that made this enormous path. Then he's telling him that he is, like, how they met, which is really back in 1798. So they've known for each other for 18 years. And he's saying every summer they get together and they hang out. And sometimes they do stuff. Other times they just talk, etc. And then he starts to talk about some of the things that they've done. And there's like an entire story about how him and George Washington had a feud because Washington wanted cherries to be the national fruit and Johnny wanted it to be apples. And they basically had a contest who could plant the most trees, and Johnny, steamrolled him because he had stolen magical apple seeds from John Adams, which is an interesting twist because really at no point in this story do Brian and Jeff say that guy is a good guy because he got the magical artifact, whatever. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is, no, he's just a good guy. He can sense magic. He can sense goodness, essentially, is what it seems like, is some of the magic he might be able to sense. That's just my take on a little bit of it.
It's really interesting that so he's not magical in any way, but he has magical seeds, and he can sense magic. So is that how he found the seeds in the possession of John Adams?
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
I think so.
And that's how I guess he found Redcoat, Simon, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And he does indicate, too, that when they met, he claimed he could sense magic as one smells apple blossoms in the spring, because that's why he could, like, sense it in Simon, like you're saying. Yeah. You said single issue. I'm like 3-issue miniseries, and they gotta have, like, 1 for 500 ratio variants. They glow in the dark or have like a button that lights up the Headless Horseman's head, because I'm assuming you're talking about the adventure that they have where they end up becoming friends with the Headless Horseman.
Yeah, doesn't that sound amazing?
Yes.
Like it's literally it's literally just a few sentences, and I'm like, I want that. Can we get that issue, Jeff?
And it's such a nice turn, right? Because at first you're like, oh, a family was being accosted by the Headless Horseman. They're going to insert the Headless Horseman in there. But then the twist is that somebody really had taken his like skull for like a rude reason. They get it back to the guy, and they all end up drinking cider until dawn because he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
So I really love those little tweaks that they put in. What'd you think of the big 2-page tweak that did you know about the worm when you went into reading this comic?
I did, but I think it's because I saw preview pages.
Yeah,
I think that's why. Otherwise, I would have been surprised, I think. But I always spoil things for myself. I can't help it.
At this point, though, even though we knew there was gonna be a worm, we don't know why there's a worm.
Exactly. I had no idea. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, and that worm's ready to go. Like that's a Beetlejuice something worm, sandworm, whatever. One of those
Yeah,
things.
this is the Dune. This is the Dune crossover issue.
That's right. The dune in the forest dune.
Forest Dune.
But it's neat. It like does some time jumping around, right? Because we see
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, they're chatting, all this stuff. Headless Horseman story is really cool, and then Giant Worm 2-page spread. Oh, and really amazing work from Hitch. Like imagine all in one issue, you had to draw a bunch of detail on some roots and a bunch of detail on a giant worm. Like I wouldn't love that. So bless you, sir, for doing that. but but then it kind of just get wound back to the beginning of the giant worm story still at present, which is them getting together for their yearly soiree, right?
So he brings us back to the story where they basically end up at this town. What town is it again? Friendship, Ohio, where there's
Mm.
like an arsonist in the town, kind of. He's like burning stuff down because he feels he's owed money. He felt like he was cheated out of land rights,
Hmm.
they said. Silas Caldwell.
I'm sure that that's a real historical figure.
Yeah.
And when we spoke with Jeff, he mentioned this issue and how he reaffirmed a lot that it was about friendship, but that also that the town that he's referencing was in fact a town in Ohio that has since had its name changed. And there is in fact a different Friendship, Ohio, but it ended up being the name they went with because of where they were located in the Midwest, but then also because that's really what this story is about. But what did you think of the dynamics with the whole like in two panels, we see Simon decline to assist his supposedly good friend in cleaning up something, like just by saying he's not good at that. And then in the next panel, he tells a kid that he should talk to his parents to try to get some food, who's obviously like a kid who doesn't have any help of any kind. Well, meanwhile, Johnny Appleseed's like trying to clean stuff up, help people out, do all these nice things.
Yeah, I know. It felt very cruel for him to say that. I'm not the one to ask, lad. Go find your parents. It's like, and the kid looks starving. He holds his stomach. Poor kid.
Yeah. And the irony there is he is forever hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost as though he's saying to the child, your life has to be what mine was because my
Mm-hmm.
life was this. So I won't be able to make yours any better. And that's like the hurdle, the development hurdle that he has to get over. But instead of doing that, right now, instead of like facing his inadequacies and realizing what he could do better, he gets wasted at a campfire with his good friend Johnny, who at this point, even though Johnny's a good guy, he's definitely an enabler. I'm just putting it out
Doesn't that make a good friend?
there. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. What did you think of their conversation though? It actually ironically, even though I'm saying that because of the cider that they sit around at night around this fire, really like the firelight, the way that Brad Anderson did the firelight. Really cool to me. But what did you think of the conversation that actually does turn to like somewhat serious for a moment when Johnny kind of holds him accountable?
Well, you see that um, Simon doesn't really believe in himself, right? He's like, I'm not a farmer or craftsman. I can't mend fences or nor sow fields. If you want me to help, I've got one skill. I can track down any man, even Silas Caldwell. So that's like the one thing he's good at. He knows.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, okay, dude, then why don't you go track down some animals and then come feed the kids?
I know,
Like
yeah.
there's all these things you could still do. Like you don't, I don't know. To me, it's like a perpetual excuse as to why it's like he doesn't want to yet, and he has to get
Yeah.
to the point one day where he wants to. And I feel like Johnny can see that the potential is in him to one day want to get better,
Yes,
but
yeah. And we know he
yeah.
does.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got laser guns in the future one day, so he's got to make something of himself, you know? And they get wasted, though, right? And then they go tromping through the woods because they're convinced that they're going to track this dude by torchlight.
But they're still drinking.
Oh, they're drinking the whole way. They got like
They got a
many
long way
jugs.
to go. Yeah.
Many
But then
jugs.
they also realize they've gone in circles because they see their own footprints. Now, what's the deal with that? Do you think? Is it because they've been drinking too much?
I think honestly that's all it is. Because he says we had skill and determination on our side, but overconfidence fueled by a splash or 6 of cider is a tricky thing. So I think the implication is that, yeah, they just lost track, you know, and they have those multiple panels where they're just laughing and you could tell that their ABV is going up.
Now, I may have jumped over this back when the kid asked him for food, how he talks about how Simon says he was orphaned and had an abusive father. Like, I guess it was his foster parent was abusive.
You know, I wanted to bring that up because I thought it was interesting. Most of the time when we hear his parent referenced, it's when he dies. Like he says, when he dies, he always sees his father saying something terrible to him. And this was the first time I believe that it was indicated that he was orphaned. The person who ended up being that abusive person was in fact a foster parent or whatever. I would assume that that's probably not who like picked him up off the street or whatever, but was someone that for whatever reason did take a foster child. Things worked a lot differently back then, in that regard. But yeah, it is interesting to know like, oh, he doesn't know his parents, you know, like, yeah, like that hole is usually filled sometimes.
Does that relate to the cover? How we were talking about the baby laying there on the floor?
Oh, I think that's him. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, in the apple.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. So it's an important thing. They want us to know, like, hey, this is what happened, for all intents and purposes.
But after they realize they've been traveling in a circle, Johnny Appleseed wants to do like what is it, an enchantment? What does he call it? Yeah, he wants to enchant an apple, and by doing this, it'll lead them in the direction of this Silas guy they're after, right?
Yeah, I like it. And so
but I'm confused. So he doesn't have magic powers, but he does know, I guess, spells.
It's like I'm not a Star Wars person. Like I'm not a hater, but I'm not a Star Wars person. But I also know, like in that mythos, there's Jedi, and then there are Force sensitive people.
And would that be him? Would you say that's what Johnny Appleseed is? Is like Force sensitive?
Yeah, or like a Muggle. Like here, I'll try to speak Snoggle language for a minute here. Like if you're a Muggle that like can see some of the stuff or kind of sense some of the stuff, but you can't really harness the magic for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
But we'll talk a little bit more about it in his bio because I think that like when he says nature, there's already magic in all of it. Simon, our connection to the world is a network of energy. I don't think that's him being a hippie. I think that's because he actually can like see that and feel that.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, in my opinion, like I don't think that is in touch with magic as Simon by any means though. Like clearly he needs Simon to enchant the thing and do the stuff. So
yeah, he needed him to connect with the apple, but then they end up arguing and the spell ends up basically turning an apple into the largest apple ever. Just a massive, like, how big is that apple? That's got to be like, what, like a 15-story building?
Oh, definitely. And wider. Than that. Like a 15-story parking garage.
But this is where it connects back to the beginning where they're on the chase and we discover the giant worm is also, it was inside the apple. So it grew at the same time the apple grew.
And that's what made the giant, like, trench or whatever.
Yes,
and the presumption was he was like supposed to be touching the apple. They got into an argument. The magic got messed up. And so now he wants him to go touch it again. Like Johnny wants him to go touch it again to get the magic back out of the worm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, there's nothing, the only instruction he gives him is just be the selfish bastard you already are. It'll come naturally. And he just like rides the worm and his eyes glow blue. But the coolest, I have a theory very quickly about this panel. So it's when he jumps on the worm and his eyes glow blue. And he says, Johnny later informed me I lasted all of 5 seconds before being flung off. It felt like an eternity. And here's the key part, though. Funny how the perception of time alters depending on the situation you find yourself in. Someone should write about that. Do you know anybody who ever wrote about that?
Einstein.
Yeah.
Yeah. Theory of relativity.
Yeah. It's smart comics. That's cool.
It's too smart for me, especially at the time of recording this.
Yeah, so I just thought that was so neat because it's
What's interesting is like from that page, from that moment that he says that, and we have that brilliant connection to Einstein there. You turn the page and the worm is back to regular sized worm, and he's like, "There you go, big fella."
Yep.
So it took 5 seconds for the worm to return to its natural state, which is interesting. Does he have these powers, or was it in conjunction with Johnny Appleseed? Like, how does it work? Like, what's the, like, are we going to see, is this basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Kids situation that Simon has these powers now? Are we going to see a little bit of crossover there?
Rick Moranis as Simon Jerk.
Yeah.
That's a good movie. But it's fair that you say that. Oh, really? That's appropriate. Watched it to prepare for this.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it was research.
And you're right, though, because the size of this apple is certainly in Honey Shrunk the Kids, like when they're near the Oreo or whatever. Yeah. This apple is bigger than the buildings in this town. And the only thing that we see from Simon after he sucks all that magical energy back in is like he looks like he's covered in some sort of goop, like the pink stuff in Ghostbusters 2 or something. But you would think he would have been like rejuvenated or empowered or like have to release some energy. But maybe it doesn't take that much magical power to grow an apple to be really big. It's just an apple and a worm when you think about it. They do say one thing. The kids are happy and they'll be making apple pie for months because this whole village is going to eat this giant apple. But
so they leave it large. They keep it large. They decide not to, I guess, shrink it because he could shrink it, right?
I guess that would be.
But he has these magical apple seeds. Why didn't he just plant a bunch of trees for all of the hungry kids before this?
Or it makes you wonder, could he plant a bunch of seeds and then walk up and down those rows with Simon and have Simon grow all the trees immediately? That's not what they're doing, but it makes you wonder because of what we just saw.
I want to see him take a cow or a goat and make it like a giant cow or goat. Food for everyone. Bread. Here's a loaf of bread. Giant.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. He hasn't really seemed to have much control over that.
He has no control over anything, this guy.
So they're happy, though. It seems as though they kind of they don't really mention who they're hunting for, the Caldwell guy, until the very last panel after the two best friend guys depart. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like there's this one panel where it looks as though Simon is getting teary-eyed and he's trying to say he's sorry that he did all the stupid things that he did, blah, blah, blah. And he's saying, like, why are you my friend, basically. Mm-hmm. And this is a good moment where on the second to last page where Johnny we can see his face and he's holding the green apple. I really think it's neat how Brian showed his age just 18 years later. Like you can tell the guy's like probably now like mid 40s and he was younger before. I think that's really cool. But he uses the apple as a metaphor for Simon and how he can see magic, right? He says, I can see magic. And he says, you're no bad apple, Simon. You've got promise. You're just taking your time. And that's interesting, right? Because it seems more like he's a guy that can see magic, like magical artifacts or whatever. But that's not really the point there. The point is that he can see potential in a person too.
Interesting. Yeah. So he sees magic and the potential in people.
I guess. I mean, or he's just trying to be encouraging or whatever. I feel like if I had a magical bag of seeds that just grew apple trees all over the country, I'd be pretty ecstatic all the time. You know, especially that day and age.
What kind of apples? This is my question because I don't like all apples. Imagine if they're Granny. I don't want no Granny Smith apples. Okay. I want some Gala or Honeycrisp.
So I imagine like all these little villages and there's a famine back in the day. And then there's this one town as Johnny and Simon are traveling to the villages, helping all these people with like apples as the only source of sustenance because it's an emergency. They get to Michael Schwartz's town and he closes the doors and he says, I'll have none of your apples. My people will starve.
Exactly.
But it is cool. Right, because it's meant to remind us, hey, he's developing. He's going to become more. And in the end, he does mention how he does indeed get a hold of Silas Caldwell, the arsonist, and hands him over to the local authorities.
It's interesting. We never see the character. The whole issue, right? We keep hearing about this guy. We don't need to see him. It's not necessary, but it's just an interesting choice that we never see him get locked up. You know, the antagonist, I guess, is him, but it's also the worm and Simon himself.
Yeah, the notes for the show indicate in the end, it's about a dude who's had just as hard a run of it as anyone, seeing potential in another dude who's acting like a knucklehead with magic.
Tell me about this bio, though. Give me.
Oh, you do want to talk about the bio?
Yeah, dude. Just give me a little. As an American, tell me about how does this bio compare to what you know about the real Johnny Appleseed? Because the lines have blurred quite a bit for me, Nick, as to what is real and what isn't with these characters.
On the record, everything that Brian Hitch and Jeff Johns have written is true, according to American history. Clearly, no. I'll be honest with you. The Tale of Johnny Appleseed, for me, I was really just one that of somebody who went around and planted a lot of apple trees. I didn't know more than that, and it's I don't feel like I feel like that would probably be rather common for most folks. Like it's not like there's a history book chapter about the fact that in all reality, he had over 1,200 acres of land brimming with thriving apple orchards all across the Midwestern United States and Canada. But I feel as though there's probably some truth to that. There's probably some truth because the big emphasis that they have here is that he was kind of like a master horticulturalist, like a pioneer. They call him a pioneer nursery man. He introduced and popularized the revolutionary concept of growing apple trees from seeds rather than relying solely on grafting techniques. I don't even know what that is. It's probably some sort of propagation or something. So, but it also points out in the bio that he did in fact steal the seeds from John Adams' farm. Mm-hmm. And, it's he just seems like a guy who can sense magic, but also maybe like sense it in nature. Like it reminds me of like a druid or a geomancer. That's a Valiant thing. Stuff like that.
And he died in 1845.
He did.
When did he meet Einstein? 1900s? No, it was
Yeah.
late. Yeah.
I think he met him in late 18, and then they parted ways in 1909. Remember when there was some sort of event that we haven't heard about yet, where then there was also a funeral.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I was trying to, like, piece together when did he meet Einstein. I just don't remember. I'd have to go back. What year was it that he met Einstein, and when did he steal the bag of apple seeds to escape Benedict?
Oh, I think it was. You're wondering how Benedict got a hold of Johnny Appleseed's apple seeds because
Yeah,
Johnny
yeah.
Appleseed's, yeah, he dies in 1845. So how's Benedict get that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Makes you wonder if because he wasn't George Washington and he was George or whatever it was, like because maybe that feud had to do with those guys. So yeah, great issue. I liked it. Like you said, I think we're in the side quest realm. And the next one after this is similar in the sense that we get another interesting character that helps define him. But as we've seen from really Jeff's style all around, often he's the master of the slow burn leading to the next turning point, right? And in this case, we really think it's the Northerner who's coming soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
I can't wait. Yeah. After this, I'll have to go read issue 10 now.
Yeah, Annie Oakley. She is the main character, and she's really cool. And we do have a listener mail. I don't know if you recall, but we do have a listener mail segment that we get now. And this is a pretty cool question. I thought you might be able to weigh in on it. Yeah, I like it. I think it's neat, especially with what you said earlier about Armored and the Kickstarter that you were about to do. So this is from Justine Time, and it's spelled like the tea, or the whatever, the herb. So that's witty. They write, "Hi, Nick and Becky. Thank you for all your hard work. People don't know how much time goes into making a podcast. Thanks. I've noticed more and more of the Ghost Machine books lately coming out with trade paperback collected editions and or hardcover editions. Being new to comics, hey, another person new to comics who found Ghost Machine, you rock. I've found that there are two camps of readers. Those who read issues and those who wait for trades. Obviously, you have to read issues to keep having new episodes, but what is your preference as readers and what is more popular overall?" So what is your opinion and thought on this, Michael?
Well, after doing so many signings, in the US and in Canada, I think I've discovered that people are now, they prefer collected editions.
Really?
Yeah, I really think, especially at the Toronto Comic Con, I've never sold so many issue ones of Armored, and I would say 90% of them said, I can't wait to get the collected edition. And they were just getting issue one to try it out and to support me, but that they would, grab the collected edition. So, but personally, they asked what I like better. I like single issues. I wish single issues came out, more frequently. But it's impossible. It's like it takes so long to make a single issue. I wish we could read a single issue every week. Like that would be a great pace, and I know DC has done that many times. Jeff did it with 52 or Countdown, I think, as well, where a comic comes out every week. Or I think Batman, wasn't it bi-weekly for a bit? I would love that. Like that would be awesome. Like TV schedule. Like, wouldn't that be cool, Nick? Like you get a cliffhanger and then it's like, oh my God, I have to wait. Like I almost like the anticipation of it. Like that's why I like reading all of the Ghost Machine books, is there's like an anticipation to find out what's going to happen next. So that's me personally. If you're reading the collected edition, you get to a cliffhanger. It's like, oh, you just turn the page and you can read it right away, and it's like, oh, it's over.
Yeah, that's
It's the
true.
withholding that's fun.
But you're saying that in your professional experience, that the masses seem to be more like trade paperback, collected edition, hardcover people nowadays.
I feel like it's going that way. That's what it felt like. I'm no expert though. I just, I've only been doing this since May. My comic only came out in May, but it feels that way. Like just seeing at the cons, like people are buying collected editions. I don't know. I don't have like a huge bookcase where I can keep putting in books, but I have lots of boxes that I can keep filling in single issues. So I don't know. I don't know. What about you, Nick? What about you and Becky? Tell me your preferences. I'm sure you could speak for her.
I can, and I mean, she reads a lot of fiction novels, so she likes a long, meaty story. I think that she does like the cliffhanger aspect of what Ghost Machine does quite a bit, though, and it's like a different pace and it's a different level of escape. I think is a comic book is different in that regard, but I think she likes the issues because it's quick and easy, and you can. She likes to reread them too, and you can like give it two reads rather quick and catch extra stuff the second time, which is something that only comic books really can do, in my opinion. For me, I think that if you utilize all the different resources that we have to access comic books nowadays, between digital and physical options that are out there to read really good stuff at rather inexpensive prices, you can read comics all the time. And so I read a lot of comics like it's the only really way that I devour entertainment other than children's content. Like the only movies or shows I watch are with my child. And so usually if I'm going to read a comic, it's not issue by issue. And I would buy like, volume one and read volume one or I might buy volume 1 through 6 and read all 6 in like a weekend or something like that of something I've never read. And because digital kind of helps you do that, Hoopla is a good way to do that. But I also have all of Energon, all of Spawn, all of Valiant Resurgence, and obviously all of Ghost Machine on my pull list. And I read all those issue by issue, and it is totally a double-edged sword. JT, Justine time. See what I did there? Because I would rather not wait for the trade to come out. I also really like collecting comic book issues and putting them in bags and boards and putting them in boxes, like Mike said. So I don't really like. I also have no desire to do what is profoundly popular nowadays, which is have multiple giant bookshelves for you to put all your profoundly heavy books on, because I don't want to move. But if I had to move, I wouldn't want to move those. But I'll move my comic book boxes. They got handles, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because I collect Blu-rays as well and 4K discs, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a wall of them. So I understand it if you collect books. I think I've run out of space. Maybe that's my thing with books, is like the hardcovers and stuff. Hey, but I have to say, I came away from the Toronto Comic Con with a lot of single issues and books. So I don't know. Maybe I'm changing. Maybe I'm just going to be getting both.
And I think that trades play a different role nowadays than they did back in the day. When I was a kid, if you went and got a trade, it was because you were like somebody who wanted to go to the comic book store and get like the Dark Phoenix Saga phone book or like the
Yeah.
Cerebus books or something. Like it wasn't right now. It's more like, oh, are you interested in reading graphic novels? Great. There's, this like people are naturally drawn to a thicker, longer tale because it's more akin to what they're used to reading. But I have all the Ghost Machine hardcovers that come out. I have the trade, like the Redcoat one, and the Junkyard Joe, and the unnamed one
Can I
about
say
the
this?
Blizzard.
I just got the Blizzard. I never read it before. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This was like a blind spot for me because I was like hoping I could find the single issues that story appeared in, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
gave up. I was like, I give up. I just want to read it now. I'm just gonna grab the trade. So I finally grabbed the trade. But for like Geiger and stuff, I am I'm now buying the hardcovers. So I'm not getting the paperbacks. I like a hardcover. If I'm going to buy a book, I want it to be hardcover, or I want it to be one of those compact editions that DC's putting out. I'm really enjoying those because I wanted to read Hush again. I'm missing a few issues. I had it back in the day, but it was stolen from, when my collection was stolen. And I wanted to reread it, and those compact editions are great. So I could see myself getting Geiger or Redcoat or Junkyard Joe. I have it in hardcover. Is there a Redcoat hardcover yet?
They have one that's going to be planned for like the volume 1 trade paperback that just came out. There was a direct edition and a regular one, but neither of them are hardcover, but they have one planned for the future.
Okay, so I'll be getting that hardcover, but I see myself, if they'd go to compact, I would probably get the compact too.
Yeah, that's getting some steam out there. Marvel just came out with their version of that.
Yeah.
I saw a Daredevil book was published in that way.
Yeah. Maybe Armored will be like that too, but we're going straight to hardcover because it deserves.
That's exciting. It does. It has to be done right. You got to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the thing, though. It's the age of people wanting the tactile experience still. And if you're one of those people that wants that tactile experience, it seems as though you want to have like a beautiful book in your hands. And I mean, you literally just said like, "Wow, I like issues," and then went on a tangent about how you're gonna got these hardcovers and stuff because of the way they're made.
But that's only for books I love. Like I would never ever just be like, I'm going to buy a hardcover for. Oh, it's a lie. What am I talking about? You're right. I've gone on so many times. Don't even edit this, Nick. You can show the people I'm crazy.
Keeping it.
I'm buying too much. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I don't buy a lot of those thick graphic novels though, but I have some. I have like some Walking Dead omnibuses too, and I have some of the Cerebus phone books. I have the Savage Dragon phone books. Stuff like that. The essentials, stuff that you got to have in case the power goes out and the zombies come. You still got that. Yeah. So, hey, JT, thanks so much for your awesome listener mail. We would love to hear from all of you other listeners out there too. So if you want to send us a question, a comment, a heckle, make sure to do that at ghostmachinefans@gmail.com. And let me tell you, Michael, it's been fantastic having you back on the show. We hope that you had a great time.
Yeah, thank you for having me back on to chat about this.
We couldn't do it without you. You were definitely missed last time, but we are obviously excited about everything that you have going on at Armored. And what's the other podcast you do real quick?
I also do Wizards, the podcast guide to comics, where we do deep dives into Wizard magazine, and we re-examine what was happening at the time of each issue was released. We're currently on episode 105, which is issue 105. So if you haven't listened to that podcast and you want to travel back to the early 2000s, definitely give that podcast a shot. Or you can go start at the beginning and listen to the episode 1, which covers issue 1 in the 90s. I wasn't on then though, Nick. And I came on as we were doing issues in the late 90s. So if you just want to hear the sweet voice, you gotta jump ahead to like issue 90, 85.
Make sure not to miss Mike's dulcet tones. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. If you guys are in the early aughts, I'd love to hear you talking about some Top Cow action for sure.
Oh, yeah. That's where we're at now. So
Yeah, and Jeff Johns getting his super stride around that time for sure. So it's a lot of fun.
He's been mentioned a few times. Not a lot. Yeah. He's just, just the mention about Stargirl. Like, we're in the Stargirl era. And JSA has been featured a few times. But Jeff is not, I think, a part of it yet. Because those early issues was just Goyer and James Robinson.
Yep. Yep. It's a very cool podcast. I loved Wizard Magazine growing up, so I'll check it out. And everybody out there should do the same. You can check out all of our other content at www.ghostmachinefans.com, where you'll find our Pinterest, our Blue Sky, our Twitter. There's a link to the Facebook group, Comics fan page, Ghost Machine Comics fan page, friends of the show over there. Also, don't forget to check out the Reddit. There's been a lot of conversations happening there of late. And most importantly, our Instagram, which is Ghost Machine Fans. That's where we post almost every day to keep you updated on everything Ghost Machine. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.